This movie was so beautiful, and it really touched me on a very profound level. And I'm noticing a big difference now that I'm a father, and I have been for 3 years. But it's just really fascinating watching movies that may be about parents and relationships and what I'm getting out of it today versus what I was then. And I'm sure, are you a father?
I'm a father of two. I have a daughter who will be 4 in February and a son who will be 2 in April.
Oh, that's
Yes,
awesome.
well, yeah.
Well, do you feel that being a father genuinely helps inform playing one on screen?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There was a long time where I just didn't feel like I could, there's just so many things that shift, as you said. There's major transformations that happen in one's lifetime, and one could be when loss of a parent,
Hmm.
but the other could be also when life before you had a child and life after. Um, so that for me was huge. And actually, for the making of this film, when we were shooting it, my son was just born weeks earlier, like 6 weeks, I think, when we got the film.
Hmm.
And when I had my daughter the first time, the first child, I don't know if you have two. Do you have one or two?
I have one son.
Yeah. So the first is just everything is like all hands, everything is, you take all the precautions possible.
Right.
You don't do like, we didn't put him on the plane, put her on the plane before 3 months, or did everything, like really cautious. So I didn't, I was working in Chicago and missed basically the first 4 months of my daughter's life when she was born.
Hmm.
But with my son, with the second child, 6 weeks old, my wife is like, "We're coming with you." It's like, it doesn't matter. Putting him on a plane, we're all coming to New York.
Yeah.
So it really informed shooting the film because I was coming home from work and having to change diapers or be up all night with my son. And but those are all things that Walter missed
Right.
as a parent. Uh, and I can't imagine what that would be like to miss 17 years of your child's life
Yeah.
and then trying to reconnect with them or try to discover who they are. And I think that's especially at the age of a teenager. And that's what this film does so well, is it's
Mm.
showing how family can be complete strangers,
Right.
but that they mean so much, and you still have to figure out how to work through all this loss of lost time.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something. I mean, we talked about like what you get going into it, but I'm curious about like what you get coming out of it as well, because that's my experience watching it. I may have not gone through these particular situations, but there's so many little nuggets in there that deeply relate to, and because
Mhm.
it's such an intimate experience, and it examines the meaning of home. What sort of impact does it have on you? Does it cause you to look inward and maybe look at the different perspectives in your own family any differently?
Uh, yeah, well, my story is I'm a first generation American. My parents are born in Uganda and came here for schooling. So I fully understand what it feels like to be a child of two worlds and to feel like sometimes out of place in both worlds. Um, and in this case, in my family, for relatives who are back in Uganda, they might have thought that the grass was greener in the US.
Yeah.
And they come and they discover that, sometimes you need to leave something to really appreciate what it is that you have. You need to lose it to appreciate what you have.
Right.
So I think that's also something that sort of resonated with me in this. Um, yeah.
Yeah. You're a filmmaker yourself. What stood out to me is in this film is the structure of it.
Mhm.
um, I'm sure there's a version of this film that could exist where all the perspectives are kind of rolled into one and you go from A to B. But the fact that they're separated, it brings, getting all this portion of time with Walter and Esther and Sylvia. it allows you as an audience member to more deeply connect with each of these people and understand who they are and why they feel the way that they do. What have you learned about the power of structure and reveal as a filmmaker yourself, and what makes this work so wonderfully in this film?
Well, I think what's so special about this piece is just what you said, is that we each have our own window into the world, and we only see things from our own unique perspective.
Hmm.
And there can be uh, your version of the truth, my version of the truth, and then a third version. And that's what we get to see in this film, sort of unravel the different perspectives and what we think is the truth, or what we, who's hiding what. Um, and I think that's something that we all struggle with all the time, just as in relationships, because you're always constantly trying to, as soon as you take someone for granted or think you understand them, there's another layer or discovery that you make. And we often land in trouble in relationships when we take someone for granted, or we think we know what they're thinking.
Hmm.
Uh, or if you've ever gone through a breakup, you discover sometimes that, there's things that someone felt that you never even knew they felt, or they saw things in a way that you never even knew they saw them. And so I think that's what's beautiful about the film, is that we get to see a relationship that's falling apart, and we get to see a relationship that once existed, it's now so unfamiliar, and their attempts to reconnect, and the challenge in all of that. Yeah.
Hmm. What have you learned from your experience being a director that you wish you knew when you started out as an actor?
Um, I think as an actor, usually at the beginning, when anyone's career, like especially coming from theater, is this sort of concept of getting it right, doing things doing the right way, or getting things perfect. Or if you come from a theater background, you spend 4 weeks rehearsing something, and trying to deliver the same performance night after night. And the magic of film is that sometimes the beauty is uh, its ability to capture things in the moment, and sometimes capturing mistakes
Yeah.
uh, are some of the most exciting things. And so letting go of concepts of perfection, if I was to look at myself, the thing I learned as a filmmaker and would have told myself as a young actor, is to let go of concepts of perfection, to embrace the unknown, and be willing to, fall. Because sometimes when you are in that state of falling, um, that's something that's the most interesting thing to see, is because you're really alive at that moment.
Yeah. What surprised you about this film maintaining an emotional through line? Because I don't know what it looks like in the script, but like for instance, there's a moment where the daughter's dancing, and because the filmmaker does such a great job of maintaining that tone, it goes from like the dance, and then another piece of music comes in to kind of drift the audience into the moment of the parents having their conversation together.
Mhm.
um, what surprised you about like the visual moments and maybe like the audible moments that maintain a tone in a film?
Um, well, I know that the Bruce Cole, our cinematographer, had like different color palettes for each of us, and and different ways of framing us. Like some were uh, wider shots, and some were tighter shots for different character. And so these are things that we are not really conscious of, so to speak, when we're filming as an actor. But when we saw the film up on the screen, uh, I saw like the way they were scoring this piece. Because on the page it's one thing, but of course to bring it to the screen, to visualize it, was a whole other process. And part of it also for me, what surprised me was it's such an intimate script, an intimate story, that it really relies on connecting with your fellow actors. Because I mean, I've been in situations where you have a love story or something, but the person you're playing opposite of just somehow rubs you the wrong way, or
Right.
you just don't connect with, and then it becomes that much harder. or there's opposites where you do actually really fall in love with a person, and then it gets carried away, and But this was a really great thing where I felt like I really felt a strong connection to my fellow actors, and it was professional and it was well balanced, and we had mutual respect and adoration, but we're able to really dive in and explore, and then pull out and be like, "Wow, that was great that we were able to play like that," and go back to our wives and husbands and
Right.
come back and play again the next day. Yeah.
Was there a particular moment of subtlety in this story that you've just found yourself like just completely fallen into, like it enveloped you? Like, for instance, for me, I really enjoyed the moment, even though it's so small, of you going to smell that bag. And it's almost like this is something that's kind of popped up in a lot of IFC films that I've noticed lately is just like maintaining some sort of connection with your past and like having a healthy relationship with it. And I'm just kind of curious what comes to mind with that particular scene. And is there any other moments of subtlety that stood out to you?
I think what Equa did was she really gave the space for things to exist also off dialogue. And so that's what's so beautiful about this art form, uh, is that we're able to get into people's brains, into people's heads, into people's spirits and souls without any words being spoken
Hmm.
sometimes. Uh, to see someone smell a set of sheets and to know those sheets belong to their former lover
Yeah.
just shows how much there's still longing and desire to connect. And that's the only thing he has of her, of this relationship. But at the same time, they're hiding in a closet, you know, because there's some shame with that relationship because he's a married man. Uh, but there were so many moments of like subtlety of things that existed that weren't driven by dialogue, but were driven by sort of emotional responses or proximity or being in the kitchen, all three of us in the kitchen at one point, and things that I wasn't consciously playing when we were in the moment, like thinking, oh, I'm going to do this or feel this or whatever. We just were like any great musicians playing off of one another. And I wasn't sure how it was translating on screen, but I'm grateful to see that it connected with you in some way,
Yeah.
especially these moments that weren't dialogue driven.
Right. Right. And I know, as a last question, I know we're wrapping up here. There's also like really great just moments of dialogue, like even if they're like really deep and thoughtful or even funny ones like the one where you ask Esther to dance in the middle of a restaurant and it says you're going to embarrass yourself and it's like come with me and we'll be embarrassed together, like there's like that's like strikes my dad chord or like my romantic side of myself.
Yeah.
um so I'm just curious if like there's any aspects of Walter or even the dialogue that he says that spoke to you personally.
Yeah, for me, the real thing was how he was trying to do the right thing
Yeah.
and how hard it was to do. And I cannot imagine what it would be like to, at this point, be separated from my wife and kids for 17 years.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that would be like. But I know that my kids would change radically because every week they're changing. Um, and I can't imagine what it would be like to try to reconnect with them. So I have profound respect for folks in this situation whose families have been separated and who are struggling to reconnect. Um, because love in the end is all you have, and family in the end sometimes is all you have, really.
Yeah.
And he recognizes that value, and I do too, as a husband and father. Is uh, I'll do anything for them, and if the time and space comes between us, I would hope that I could step up in a way. But I know that that time and space could ravage us in ways that we would not understand or would have a hard time grappling with. And
Yeah.
I think that's the magic of this movie.